Grandma and Grandpa Productions present the reading of The Emerald City of Oz by L. Frank Baum. Chapter 1, The Gnome King Becomes Angry. The Gnome King was... Sorry about that. The Gnome King was in an angry mood, and at such times he was very disagreeable. Everyone kept away from him, even his chief steward, Calico. Therefore, the king stormed and raved all by himself, walking up and down in his jewel-studded cavern and getting angrier all the time. Then he remembered that it was no fun being angry unless he had someone to frighten and make miserable, and he rushed to his big gong and made it clatter as loud as he could. Gong, 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 gong. In came the chief steward, trying not to show the Gnome King how frightened he was. "Send the chief counselor here!" shouted the angry monarch. Calico ran out as fast as his spindly legs could carry his fat round body, and soon the chief counselor entered the cavern. The king scowled and said to him, "I'm in great trouble over the loss of my magic belt. Every little while I want to do something magical and find I can't because the belt is gone. That makes me angry, and when I'm angry, I can't have a good time. Now what do you advise?" "Some people," said the chief counselor, "enjoy getting angry, but not all the time. To be angry once in a while is really good fun because it makes others so miserable. But to be angry morning, noon, and night, as I am, grows monotonous and prevents my gaining any other pleasure in life. Now, what do you advise?" "Well, if you are angry because you want to do magical things and can't, and if you don't want to get angry at all, my advice is to not want to do magical things." Hearing this, the king glared at his counselor with a furious expression and tugged at his own long white whiskers until he pulled them so hard that he yelped with pain. "Ouch! You are a fool!" "I share that honor with your majesty." The king roared with rage and stamped his foot. "Ho there, my guards!" Ho was a royal way of saying, "Come here." So when the guards were hoed, the king said to them, "Take this chief counselor and throw him away." Then the guards took the chief counselor and bound him with chains to prevent his struggling, and they threw him away. And the king paced up and down his cavern more angry than ever. Finally, he rushed to his big gong and made it clatter like a fire alarm. "Wah, wah, 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 wah." Calico appeared again, trembling and white with fear. "Fetch my pipe." "Yeah, your pipe is already here, your majesty." "Then get my tobacco."
The tobacco is in your pipe, your majesty."
"Then bring a live coal from the furnace."
The tobacco is lighted, and your majesty is already smoking your pipe."
"Why, so I am," because the king had already forgotten this fact. "But you are very rude to remind me of it."
"I am a low-born, miserable villain."
The Gnome King could think of nothing to say next. So he puffed away at his pipe and paced up and down the room. Finally, he remembered how angry he was and cried out, "What do you mean, Calico, by being so contented when your monarch is unhappy?"
What makes you unhappy?"
"I've lost my magic belt. A little girl named Dorothy, who was here with Ozma of Oz, stole my belt and carried it away with her." And the king was so angry he was grinding his teeth with rage.
She captured it in a fair fight."
"But I want it. I must have it. Half my power is gone with that belt."
"You will have to go to the land of Oz to recover it, and your majesty can't get to the land of Oz in any possible way.
said the steward, yawning because he had been on duty 96 hours and was a little bit sleepy. Why not? Because there is a deadly desert all around that fairy country, which no one is able to cross. You know that fact as well as I do, Your Majesty. Never mind the lost belt. You have plenty of power left, for you rule this underground kingdom like a tyrant, and thousands of your gnomes obey your commands. I advise you to drink a glass of melted silver to quiet your nerves and then go to bed. The king grabbed a big ruby and threw it at Calico's head. The steward ducked just in time to escape the heavy jewel, which crashed against the door just over his left ear. Get out of my sight! Vanish! Go away! And send General Blug here! Calico hastily withdrew, and the Gnome King stamped up and down until a general of his armies appeared. This gnome, spelled N-O-M-E, this gnome was far and wide, This gnome was known far and wide as a terrible fighter and a cruel, desperate commander. He had 50,000 gnome soldiers, all well-drilled, who feared nothing but their stern master. Yet General Blug was a trifle uneasy when he arrived and saw how angry the Gnome King was. Ha! So you're here! So I am. March your army at once to the land of Oz, capture and destroy the Emerald City, and bring back to me my magic belt. You're crazy. What's that? What's that? What's that? And the Gnome King danced around on his pointed toes and was so enraged. You don't know what you're talking about. No, wrong accent. You don't know what you're talking about, continued the general, seating himself upon a large cut diamond. I advise you to stand in a corner and count 60 before you speak again. By that time, you may be more sensible. The king looked around for something to throw at General Blug, but as nothing was handy, he began to consider that perhaps the man was right, and he had been talking foolishly. So he merely threw himself into his glittering throne and tipped his crown over his head and curled his feet up under him and glared wickedly.